We're going into the next point of the agenda that will be presented by Matthieu, and this is mainly on the what question. So what is this hydrogen certification system that Guy already gave quite a lot of hints about? Matthieu is going to share some of the more detailed questions and what are the functionalities of such a system and what are the main challenges going ahead. Matthieu, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Wouter. Hello, everybody. So I'm Matthieu Boisson, and also thank you very much to the World Organization for inviting me. So if we can go straight to next slide, and I think that, well, Guy already provided a lot of information, so I will just go back to the main messages. So what is really important to know is that, well, a geosystem has the purpose of showing to a final customer that a given share of or a quantity of energy was produced from specific sources, renewable or not. And also, a geo is really a vehicle for transferring environmental data from a producer to a supplier, from a supplier to an end consumer, and so on and so onwards. So really a geo from a customer standpoint and from a marketing standpoint is an instrument of choice. It empowers the customer to choose a specific location, for example, or an energy source, or put himself a threshold on CO2 emissions. So this is really how end customers, end consumers will choose the energy that they purchase, be it electricity, gas, or hydrogen. As it was mentioned in the chat, a geosystem functions on a book and claim system. So book and claim means that the molecule or the electron, for example, is separated from its environmental attributes. So that means that if we take the example of electricity, the kilowatt hour, the megawatt hour that's produced can be sold on the wholesale market, and its environmental attributes will be sold through another market, possibly to another customer. The rationale behind that is that we cannot track the electron itself. The electron will choose his own way from the production point to the consumption point, and so we needed another mechanism to be able to empower once again the customer choosing their own energy. For sake of time, I will just take a minute to explain you how it works in terms of governance, in terms of value chain. So as Guy said, a geo system is governed by a competent authority, and so in Europe, so geo are regulated by the RED II, but member states implement their own geo scheme, and that will lead to one challenge that I will come to later, and they appoint an issuing body that's responsible for being the bookkeeper of the geo system. So that means that the issuing body through a registry will be able to collect producers' requests to issue a guarantee regime, to create new certificates that will be unique in the system. And then those GEOs, as soon as they are issued, can be either traded to a consumer, to a supplier, to a trader, and they can be cancelled, meaning that they will be counted for the consumption of the end consumer. And as soon as a geo is cancelled, it can never be used again, and preventing any double claim of renewable energy, renewable electricity, for example. In Europe, the geo system has been developed for 15, 20 years for electricity. At first, we didn't use a geo system that was governed by the member state, by national geo scheme, but it was 100% voluntary initiative that was led by, that was called REX, not REX International, REX, Renewable Electricity Certificate System. And then a long time, so the RED I introduced a guarantees of origin system for electricity, heating, and cooling. And so the voluntary certification scheme that was REX a long time disappeared to the benefit of national geo system. The geo system for electricity is much more mature than anything that what we see at the moment for hydrogen. That's normal. It's been developed for 20 years. And so now the geo electricity is a European market. and GEOs can be traded from one country to another using the EECS standard, so the European Energy Certificate System, that's governed by the Association of Issuing Body, the AIB. So here, I think this is interesting to keep that in mind, to try to see how things can be will be developed for hydrogen. If we go to next slide. So here, just to say that now that you have a good understanding of how electricity works, the same principle will apply to gas and hydrogen. So the red one created GEO for electricity, heating and cooling. The red two introduced GEO for gas and hydrogen. And so the GEO system will work in the same manner as electricity. So it will be a book and claim system. So hydrogen producer will claim GEO that then can be sold separately from the molecule. If we go to next slide. So now the question is, as I said before, the GEO enables the customer to choose a certain molecule based on its environmental attributes. What does it mean? It means that we need a standard datasheet that is harmonized and allows the customer to differentiate two different products in a non-biased way. So that means that we need to see the same information, the same unit, the same methodology, etc., so that the user can trust the system. Just like for a car, it will be difficult to compare two vehicles' consumption when the way of expressing those are different. So using liter per kilometers or using miles per gallon, for example. So one good example for hydrogen is CO2 emission allocation. Industry expressed the need for such an information, but if CO2 emission allocation were to be expressed based on different methods, value-based or mole-based or energy-based, for example, in different countries, then it would lead to market distortion and lead to distrust in the GEO system. And so, as Guy and Stephanie said, the GEO and the certification system is very important for the development of renewable hydrogen. And so it will lead to problems with the development of this market. If we go to next slide. So to summarize really what are the challenges and the core principle of a GEO system, core principle really will be trustworthiness. So that as a consumer, I want to make sure that the GEO is unique, is immutable. I want to have trust in the reliability of the system, and I want a system that is as transparent as possible. That will give, that will lead to and contribute to having a credible system, but also to ensure credibility, an adapted governance. So member states, competent authority, issuing bodies, traders, users, and associations will be very important to create a credible GEO system. Regulation data sources will also be very instrumental, and also clarity. So clarity will be to have an harmonized system, to have understandable and widely used standards, and to ensure, all in all, the best ergonomy, the best user experience, as we could say, for producers, traders, and end consumers. With that in mind, there are a few challenges that we've witnessed already for the electricity system, and that will keep being challenges for hydrogen, gas, heating, and cooling. And one is harmonization, because as I said, GEO are regulated under RED II, but then each member state implements its own national GEO scheme based on the regulation, meaning that there can be differences between the different implementation of GEO system in countries, creating market distortion. So we need to avoid specific rules from country to country as much as possible. The other one is standardization. He already mentioned that we are at the moment, CEN is developing a new standard for GEO. The discussions and how the standard will look like, it's still under discussion, but it's very important that we have such standard to rely on to be able to use a GEO system that's clear for everyone. The EECS system that's governed by the IIB is also very important. And the IAB is now not only developing a scheme and maintaining a scheme for electricity, but also for gas, including hydrogen, heating and cooling. And also, and this is one of the biggest questions when it comes to geo, and it was the case for 20 years regarding electricity, the market is looking to have more and more information about price discovery, and here not to try to find an adequate solution, but this is really a challenge that will come up because most of the geo market is OTC, and so as a result, it's always very difficult to have clear price information on a geo. Maybe if we can go to next slide, please. So very quickly, and so then here, so as Guy mentioned, we CertifHy created a geo system, a certification system, as well as labels. And so I just wanted to make the difference between what's geo and what's a label, because they tend to be looked at the same way, but those are actually very different. So a geo is really a tracking system. It presents factual information. It's the identity card of the molecule. It needs to be harmonized and to facilitate consumer choices. While a label is much more of a flag. It's an additional field which can be added to the geo. It's really a subjective appreciation of the molecule. This appreciation is mostly based on geos, based on the information that are on the geo, but it can be used, other information can be used. It's used most of the time for marketing purposes. Example, I want a label for electricity. I want a label to make sure that I consume only additional electricity. This is not the role of the geo to present that. Or I want to consume local energy, energy that's produced near my household or anything like this. Or I want a specific CO2 emission threshold, or I want to consume specific energy sources. So this is really about those labels are not governed by the EU and are not governed by member states. They are really commercial initiatives aiming at providing further information on energy to the customer. So this is very important to make the separation between the geo and the label. Next slide, please. So this is another, so we can skip, but I'd like to go to next slide. So now that we've talked about the geo, Wouter also introduced other ways of using hydrogen. And so on top of the geo system, there will be other certification system that fulfill other purposes. So here, for example, if we talk, so it will be driven by different factors. Most of them will be driven by regulation. For example, as Wouter mentioned, the RED II introduced a 14% renewable fuel target on fuel suppliers. Hydrogen as a renewable fuel of non-biological origin can be counted in this target for fuel supplier. However, it comes with a different set of specification in the way that new requirements on how the hydrogen should be produced. For example, the hydrogen to be counted as a fuel should be produced as a RED II compliant fuel, should be produced out of additional electricity. And also, it should be shown that there is a temporal and geographical correlation between the electricity production and the consumption of the electrolyzer. So all those different sets of requirements calls for a different certification system. And I think that what it's very important here is to understand that each certification system comes with a specific end goal, a different set of specifications, but also it's attached to different business models. So as a supplier of certificate, as a supplier of energy, the first question should be, what's my customer's business case? And then it will be possible to find the correct certification scheme and then procure the energy in the way that's adapted to my customers' needs. Now, I would like to go to slide and 17, please, and because Guy actually gave already a lot of information of what CertifHy is and what has been achieved so far. So I'd like to present the CertifHy Phase 3. So the CertifHy Phase 3 started in October 2020. And while Phase 1 focused on the regulatory environment, Phase 2 on measurement techniques in a non-regulated environment, one thing that happened in between is RED 2. And so now this is about really how to set up a harmonized geo scheme for hydrogen. And so this is our main objective, one of our two main objectives with CertifHy. One way of doing that is that we will extend the stakeholder platform which Guy presented, and we'll add a new working group that's dedicated to issuing bodies. And so we'll welcome competent authorities from member states, issuing bodies, registry operator, to give them feedback and to collaborate with them in order to facilitate the development of an harmonized geo scheme for hydrogen. I would also, since we are here at eWorld with a lot of traders, utilities, and market participants listening, probably that we have a working group 3 that's focused on commercialization and end users. And so if anyone's interested to join this stakeholder platform, feel free to contact us via certifhy@initio.com or through our website, certify.eu. If we go to next slide, please. So as I said, one of the main objectives for CertifHy 3 is to focus on guarantees of origin and to facilitate the implementation of an harmonized geo scheme in Europe. And for that, we welcome the association issuing body in the CertifHy consortium. And so we'll work in close collaboration with the IIB and more specifically the gas scheme group that's inside the IIB to produce an update of the EECS rules. So as of now, the X rules are mainly used for electricity, but the X rules will extend to gas, hydrogen, heating, and cooling. And so we are working with the IIB to produce a scheme for gas, including hydrogen, that issuing bodies and market participants will be able to use in the future. Also, we'll work on issuing bodies related documentation to facilitate the establishment of issuing bodies and registry operators in different member states. Next slide. Doing so, we will assist 4 member states to implement this new gas scheme. And so those 4 member states will be Austria, or 4 domains, Austria, Wallonia, Flanders, and the Netherlands, to implement the gas scheme and to implement the first hydrogen geos in Europe, based on the certification, what we call the certification stack that you'll see on the right-hand side. And all those practical exercises will allow us to give feedback to the stakeholder platform and so on and so onwards. Next slide, please. Finally, we don't want CertifHy doesn't want to stop at geos, but as I said, and as Wouter and myself already introduced, hydrogen will also play a role in the transport sector by way of renewable fuel on non-biological origin that will call for a new dedicated certification system that will not be governed by member state, but by the EU by way of what we call a European voluntary scheme. And so CertifHy will build a certification scheme for hydrogen as a renewable fuel of non-biological origin that's RED 2 compliant for the transport sector, that comes with a lot of more new requirements including mass balancing, additionality, geographical and temporal correlation. And so this is one of our main objectives. Next slide, please. And finally, I would conclude by saying that we'll keep working on understanding the market needs and investigate all the downstream hydrogen uses in Europe and intercontinentally. And so for that, we already have a relationship with REX International and associations such as the EFET, so that we can not only focus on GEO and RFNBO, but also try to find new uses and new certification system that will facilitate the development of clean hydrogen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthieu. Thank you very much, Matthieu, for giving an introduction in what is planned by CertifHy 3, which will be running for a period of another 2.5 years. So I see there's quite a lot of work left and quite a lot of challenges to be met.